What is going on, everybody? This is Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. And here on today's episode, we haven't talked about it all year, but we are going to have a college football playoff selection show. So I hope you guys find that entertaining. And God, I could rant about my lock board this week. Everybody says that every week. This is my turn to rant. But yeah, we got another lock board performance coming for you guys. And then we're going to review the Western Conference for the NBA and some big storylines in the NBA, as well as make our NBA Finals predictions. So, yeah, that's what we got in tune for this episode. Now, let me introduce you to the rest of the crew.
What is going on, guys? It is Connor, the co-host with the most, and I'd call it a good football week for me. I was going to say average, but it was a pretty good week. The Steelers did lose for the second week in a row, so that was the bad part of it. But my college teams were 2 for 2 this week. UNC had a ginormous blowout win over Miami, and thankfully, if all else fails, App State beat Georgia Southern this year, so can hang my hat on that. And my lock board did decently, but I'm excited to finally talk about college football since we, even though I don't watch it as much as like Zach and Nate do, but we obviously haven't gotten to talk about it all year because of the pandemic. So I'm excited.
And what's going on, y'all? This is Eric, your ranting co-host here. While it wasn't a superb week on the lock board, I did manage to come in first place this week, so I can never complain about that. And excited to get into a little more NBA talk. And I think Zach said earlier before we started recording there might be a special guest appearance or two happening.
Yes, there is. So stay tuned for that.
I mean, we had a Giannis's agent on last week, but so stay tuned to see who it's going to be this week.
Yeah.
Yes. Stick around for the NBA segment for sure.
Definitely. Good teaser there, Eric.
Yes.
Yeah. No Nate for this episode. Nate's doing the Nights of Lights in St. Augustine, so he can't make it this time. But for Around the Shield, we're going to be talking about college football, as we mentioned before, and we're going to do a college football playoff selection show. So these are our predictions for what will happen. And Eric, since I know you don't typically watch college football as much as Connor or I, or follow the standings, I thought you'd be a good candidate to be the host for this playoff show. So let you be the host for this, man.
I'm honored to do that, and so
he's a good Jeopardy host too, so he's got the experience.
We have that coming up in the future too, so definitely
pretty soon.
And spoiler alert: Eric's going to be the host.
I've been working on a new round of Jeopardy boards over the last couple weeks. So
someone's got to take my title from me, or at least try to.
We'll see. Well, obviously they'll try, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, so with that being said, everybody, we would like to welcome you to the 2020-2021 National Championship playoff episode, where our panelists, Zach and Connor, will be breaking down who they think the 4 playoff teams will be in order. And I am your host for this, Eric Conger. And with that being said, let's get right into it here. So Zach and Connor, we're going to start with the number 1 overall seed. Who do you got here, and break it down for us? Ooh, that was nifty.
Eric, you want to introduce the team?
So the number 1 seed that has just popped in, if you saw it on YouTube here, is the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Oh my God, what an outrageous pick!
Whoa, I mean,
Wait, I mean, I'm not the college football guy, but how did the Tennessee Volunteers not get this spot? Come on.
This is favoritism by the committee.
I mean, are you sure that we don't want to give this to like Rutgers or something? Like,
come on.
I mean, I know that Alabama's a decent team and all, but
yeah. Okay. So obviously, not too much explanation needed for this. Alabama is currently the number 1 team in the country, and they just have to beat Florida. Sometimes with the college football playoffs, it matters how you win. I don't think it will matter how they beat Florida. As long as they do, it guarantees them this number 1 seed. And with the way Florida played last week, just the mental errors and everything, I don't know how much they're going to be ready to play this. Obviously, hopefully Keontae Johnson is doing better at the University of Florida, the basketball player. But yeah, so Florida had a major error in
major gaffe, probably the gaffe of the college football season.
Yeah, just terrible at the end of that game. And so Alabama gets to play them now, and I think it'll be an easy win for them. They are Alabama after all. So it's definitely going to be Alabama number 1. Connor, do you want to add anything more to this?
It definitely scares me that how good Alabama looks this year. I mean, obviously, if you've listened to this podcast before, like Zach and Eric being Tennessee fans, obviously don't have any love for Alabama at all. And, I don't have any SEC team loyalty, but, I'm one of these people that, I don't have any love for Alabama just because I'm tired of seeing them win all the time. But it is very scary to me that they just look unbeatable right now. I mean, even when they had, games against better teams, like a game against Texas A&M and, it's just no one's
Georgia.
even come close. Yeah, a game against Georgia. It's like no one's even come close to beating them. And it's just like, barring something crazy, I mean, it's just looking like another Alabama runaway. I mean, it's kind of sad, honestly, just because, from a fan standpoint, you wish that someone else would win, but can't deny that Alabama looks like the team to beat.
Yeah, definitely, man. Their offense, I thought, might take a step back with no Tua, but they still have probably 3 first-round pick wide receivers next year. And Mac Jones is in the Heisman running. He might be a first-round pick. Like, they just never stop.
Yeah, and I mean, and just like, because the only thing that would like maybe slightly concern me a little bit would be the defense doesn't look as good as it has in the past. But like, I mean, it's gotten better, I will say, because at the beginning of the season, it didn't look as good. Like, they were giving up, giving up 19 points to Missouri. Like, you don't typically see that as being that bad, but against Missouri, I think it's a bit bad. And then obviously they gave up 48 against Ole Miss. Yeah. So. But they've definitely clamped down recently. I mean, they shut out Mississippi State. They only gave up 3 to Kentucky, only 3 to Arkansas, and only 13 to Auburn, which, Auburn tends to give them a good game most of the time. So they just look unbeatable right now.
Yeah, so this was the committee unanimously chose Auburn as the number 1 team. Also, there
was no
debate
debates
there.
here.
Yeah.
I mean, fortunately for Alabama fans, I was not on the committee because otherwise it could have been Tennessee. While I don't watch a lot of college football, I know how bad they've been.
This host is really a favorite Tennessee.
He really is. It's
no bias.
Well, hey, it's a good thing for Alabama that they're not in the same position they were last year, because I remember I made my bold prediction on them missing it last year, and it paid off. So they've definitely done a 180.
Connor's not locking that this year, though.
Yeah, that would probably be about the dumbest lock I could ever make.
All right, guys. So Alabama is the number 1 team, and we are now going to move on to who the committee has selected as the number 2 team. And that will be the Clemson Tigers. So we will let Connor and Zach discuss why Clemson is the number 2 ranked team.
Yeah, Connor, you can start with Clemson.
Okay, yeah. So basically, Clemson, like Alabama, we had a unanimous across the board that Clemson was going to be the number 2 seed. This is mainly, obviously, assuming that they're going to beat Notre Dame, because if they lose to Notre Dame, then things might get a little bit interesting for Clemson, possibly.
Yeah.
But this is assuming that they're going to beat Notre Dame. I mean, obviously, the big caveat in the game that they lost to Notre Dame was they didn't have Trevor Lawrence. So when you don't have your potentially Heisman winning quarterback, he might not win it this year just because he missed a couple games. But, had he played the whole season, he was the obvious front runner. So not having him hurt, but, and as soon as even without him, they were still in that game against Notre Dame until the very end. So It's not hard for all of us to imagine that Clemson, maybe not an easy win, but a comfortable win, I guess we'll say, over Notre Dame to easily get them to number 2. They're not going to jump over Alabama, obviously, unless Alabama somehow loses to Florida. But yeah, I think this was not another team, like not much debate here. That like if they beat Notre Dame, they're obviously going to be number 2.
Yeah, this the big obviously difference this game is they're gonna have Trevor Lawrence since he was out with COVID the first time that they met, and that meeting was in South Bend, and Notre Dame. It took them like I think it was 2 overtimes to win that game finally. So that was a very close game that Clemson easily could have won, um, and they didn't. But Trevor Lawrence, people forget this, but he's only lost one college football game in his whole career in his time at Clemson, and that was last year to LSU, which was one of the best teams of all time. So I really, and obviously you see why he's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. It's just his talent. Um, he'll throw an interception and it'll be like, oh my god, I threw an interception. Like that's how it is with Trevor Lawrence. Like people will find any little thing that could to be wrong just because he's never not been excellent for Clemson. And the rest of their team is no slouch either. They're actually very comparable to Alabama, I would say. Between 1 and 2, I don't see as big of a difference as Connor does, just because Alabama's, I think, benefited a little bit from a weaker SEC West this year. LSU's having a down year. Auburn's having a down year. So Alabama's benefited a little bit from their schedule. They didn't, obviously, they'll still have to play Florida and they'll play Georgia. So those are no slouches. But and the rest of the ACC, I think, is better than years in the past. So I don't see as big of a difference between 1 and 2 with Clemson and Alabama. I would pick Alabama, but could definitely see Clemson winning that game between the two of them if it came to that. But Clemson's really good, and I think they'll beat Notre Dame again. They're not going to let Notre Dame beat them twice. That would really shock me. So,
all right, and now the committee will reveal who they chose for the number 3 seed.
Yeah. So, sorry. Sorry, I got ahead of myself.
We've got Ohio State sliding into the picture. Connor left the call, actually. I'm not sure what happened there, but
apologies for that. My phone decided that it was gonna restart for some reason right there for absolutely no reason. So,
well, you got in at a perfect time because I just finished talking about Clemson.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Eric just introduced Ohio State as the number 3 team. So this is where the controversy starts, definitely. There's no question about it. If Ohio State makes the college playoff, even as the 4 seed, as long as they make the playoff, it's going to be a controversy to a lot of people. There's a lot of people that don't want them to make the playoff because they benefited from only having to play, I think, 5 regular season games and then the conference championship. So obviously this is not a traditional year. They would have had to play a normal schedule if it wasn't for COVID, but to me, the committee has already told me, based on where they have them in the rankings, that as long as they win, again, obviously they have to win. They're against Northwestern, the Big Ten, otherwise they're out. But I think everybody is going to pick Ohio State to win that. They're 20-point favorites. So assuming that they do win that, the committee has basically said, you're the number 3 team or 4 team. You could debate number 4, but they just have to win. The committee set that precedent, especially when a couple weeks ago they bumped Cincinnati down in the rankings, even though they hadn't lost, and they put Iowa State back in. People were thinking, oh, so you're going to put. People were thinking the controversy of leaving like an 11-0 Cincinnati out versus an Ohio State team that's only played 6 games. And I'll say this for the committee is, obviously, they need the big time names, but I really do think Ohio State's one of the 4 best teams. And they haven't had a chance to prove that because of their schedule. It's not really been a fault of their own. But when you look at the team on paper and you look at the quarterback, obviously Justin Fields, just the team in general, they definitely are, in my opinion, one of the four best teams, and they do have an advantage because they're going to be more fresh coming into this than the other teams. But uh, to me, when I look at the other teams that could potentially be in the playoffs, they're just better than them. And until they lose, I'm not going to think that they're not, even though the other teams have played more games. And that's coming from an SEC homer, SEC
You
fan,
don't have
Big Ten
Mark on
hater.
here.
That's what yeah. Mark last year was the SEC hater, Big Ten lover, but I really do think Ohio State is going to get in, and it's going to be a good game. I think they're going to give Clemson a good fight if that's who they end up playing. I would pick Clemson in that game, but it would be a heck of a fight. But I know Connor's got a dissenting opinion about Ohio State. He did not vote them in the playoffs.
Well, I guess I will save that for when we move on to the next part of this. But I mean, I'll definitely agree that this is what I think is going to happen. Because yeah, I don't see Ohio State losing to Northwestern. That would, I mean, really the only team in the Big Ten that I think could give them a fight would be Indiana. But Indiana obviously had the chance early in the season.
Yeah.
It was good. It was a close game, but being that they're in the same division in the Big Ten, they just don't. And I thought it was weird that the Big Ten still stuck with the whole division thing, because I know like the ACC and the SEC did too. But like the fact that like the ACC just didn't, they got rid of the divisions, and I know the some of the other conferences did. I think they should have gotten rid of it, because I think if you want to take the two best teams in a crazy year like this, you should have Ohio State, Indiana again. But yeah, I mean, I think they're going to win, and I definitely think they are one of the best four teams. Like just Justin Fields and the team. It's hard to argue that they have the talent there. So, but I guess I won't say too much more, since obviously later
All
I'm
right,
gonna give my reason. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not going to argue that they're one of the best teams. And I think, and if in my professional opinion, this is what I think is going to happen, even if I don't think this is what should happen.
Yeah. All right.
All right. We got getting closer to some tension here. Awesome. But before Connor does that, we will see who the committee has chosen as the fourth team. And as you can see there, it is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Yeah, so the Fighting Irish come in here at 4 in our rankings, and they have the potential, if they win, to be better than 4. But assuming that we all assume that they lose the ACC championship game, it will drop them in the rankings. But really looking at the other teams behind them, I don't see a way that those other teams make it and Notre Dame doesn't make it, just because Notre Dame's had a great season. I'm not a believer in them. I think they'll lose in the playoffs in the first round, no matter who they play out of these teams. But you can't deny that they are one of the 4 best teams based on their resume this season. Having a win against Clemson already should give them a lot of consideration to make it, no matter how they play against them the next time. But Connor, where do you? It's crazy. There's 2 ACC teams going to make it this year. I never would have thought.
Yeah. Seriously, especially after last season. I mean, the win over Clemson. I think the win over UNC is also big, because I think UNC is better than their record shows. But I think that's big, and also like you're not going to kick a 10-1 team out of the playoffs when pretty much the only chance that I would have seen for them to get knocked out is if the SEC had done the championship by best teams and not by division, to where Texas A&M was playing them. And then if Texas A&M were to beat Alabama and Notre Dame were to lose, then I could have maybe seen a scenario where they fall out. But the fact that Texas A&M isn't playing in that game, being at number 5, is a really big hindrance to them, unfortunately, for their sake. So, like, if it was Florida in that situation, like if Florida, was like 9-1 and at number 5, then yeah, I say they were in danger. But Texas A&M being there kind of gives them that barrier of safety that you're not going to fall out. And they're not going to put Iowa State in the playoff over Notre Dame. Like that would just be absurd. So, yeah, I think Notre Dame is pretty safe here at number 4. Like you said, they could be number 2. They will be number 2 if they win. But
and they could even be number 1 if Florida beat Alabama.
Possibly, for sure. But yeah, they're pretty safe whether they win or lose in the ACC title game.
Yeah. All right. So now we have here just how exactly the committee voted. Committee being myself, Connor, Nate, and Eric. The 4 biggest media members of the world.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, definitely. Or I mean, I would put our analysis way above that of the people on air right now. Stephen A.
Bump.
Skip Bayless.
As you can see on YouTube, I was joking a lot about Tennessee earlier, but I did not put them on there. So,
yes,
in case if anyone didn't get my sarcasm earlier,
Eric is a qualified enough member on this podcast to not do that. But these actually all mirror exactly what we rank them as, except for one difference, and that's looking at Connor's list. So, Connor, just go ahead and explain the discrepancies.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the biggest discrepancy that I have here is I have Texas A&M in over Ohio State, and I've honestly been saying this all year, and especially more so now. Like, in my opinion, if Ohio State had managed to play their full schedule with no cancellations, plus a Big Ten title game, then yeah, obviously Ohio State gets in. Even though they still would have played slightly less games than Alabama or Clemson or Notre Dame, they still get in because they played. But for me, in my opinion, it's just I said I want before this I might rant on this a little bit. It's just a travesty to me that a team who is 6-0, obviously undefeated, 6-0, is potentially going to get in over a team that they play another game this week, assuming they win. A team that's going to be 8-1 going in here. A team that's played 9 games against an SEC schedule type team. And the other thing about Ohio State, looking at their schedule for me, because obviously a conference championship is a big part of it, but for me, Ohio State, when you're only playing 5 games in a season, who knows what can happen over the course of the season? Even the best teams can falter. I mean, we've seen this with Ohio State in the past. Honestly, I could use that as an example where they were supposed to be, the best team in the Big Ten, but then they'll go and lose a game to Purdue or something like that, or they'll go and lose a game to Nebraska. And the thing is, they just didn't have, with not having played an entire schedule, only playing 5 games. There's a lot less room for them to do that. When you have teams like Notre Dame, Clemson, Alabama, Texas A&M playing, Texas A&M came slightly short of a full schedule since they're going to be only playing 9 games instead of 10, but still full schedules and full SEC/ACC schedules. And if you look at Ohio State's opponents too, because this is the other reason why I really don't agree with putting Ohio State in, is that other than Indiana, all the opponents that they've played have been bum teams. They beat Nebraska, Rutgers, Michigan State, and Penn State, who are all bum teams. None of those teams you can say are, and even if they had played the game against Michigan and Illinois, those are also bum teams. I think Maryland was the only good team besides Indiana on their schedule. They didn't have to play Wisconsin, they didn't have to play Iowa. They're only now just having to play Northwestern, which, I mean, Northwestern, I think, is a bit sus as number 14 also. Yeah. So, it's just and whereas you look at Texas A&M's schedule, I mean, they played an SEC schedule. They beat Florida, which is a big time win. Auburn obviously hasn't been as fantastic this year, but they beat Auburn. They had some big wins here or there, and their only loss, that one blemish on their record is to Alabama, the number 1 team in the country, and probably the number 1 team, not just in the SEC, but in, probably the team that's going to end up winning the championship. So it's just to me, it just seems that Like I don't like this at all. That a team that's played half a schedule is going to get in. I mean, like you wouldn't see this honestly in almost any other sport. And I think it's just because, and I trust me, and I've seen, and I can use history for this too. That it just seems to me like this committee has, I don't know, they're just like in love. They want to marry Ohio State because we've seen it in the past where they've gotten in when they shouldn't have. Like I don't remember what year it was exactly. I think it was 2017.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
Like 2016 2016 or 2017 when Penn State beat Ohio State and won the Big Ten title, but yet Ohio State gets in over Penn State. Like I don't get how that does not warrant anything at all. That makes no sense whatsoever. So, and it's just, again, I think it's the committee playing favorites to Ohio State, and I think it's going to take away a spot from a team that might be more deserving, like Texas A&M or Cincinnati, or even if Florida goes in and beats Alabama, then I could make an argument as to why Florida should make it. I mean, because they would have more of an argument if they hadn't lost to LSU, but obviously that was one player being really stupid for the most part. So it's just, I don't agree with it at all, even though I think it's going to happen. And I mean, of course, if Ohio State loses, it won't happen, but no one thinks that's going to happen. So I just think it's a disservice to college football, honestly, in a way, that Ohio State's going to make it in over someone like Texas A&M or Cincinnati.
Yeah, it gets back to the whole bigger tournament. Let more teams in this, because then you can have less of then you can be more sure of the thing. Because heck, especially can you imagine if we were still back in the old days of just the national championship being the 1 and 2 teams? That would be an outcry.
Oh, seriously.
Every year.
I know, because teams like if it's Alabama, Clemson, right? Teams like Notre Dame and Texas A&M, Ohio State, they're all going to miss out. And so it's just like, and because that's the thing, you're never going to fully get rid of controversy, but like it's not, to me, and I think everyone would agree, it's not a big deal when you're say there's like 8 teams in the college football playoff, right? It's not a big deal when you're arguing like an 8 seed.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay, maybe there's a controversy here or there. Like, oh, anybody can win.
It's like an 8 seed in the NBA playoffs. Like, they're not going to do anything. You're just
right.
They're there because they had a good enough season to be there. But
right. So, but it's like when you're having to argue like a top 4, that's when the controversy comes in. Especially when there's 5 conferences that are Power 5 conferences. If there was only 4 Power 5, well, that's an oxymoron. 4 Power 5 conferences. If there was only 4 power conferences, then maybe this would be slightly better. But when there's 5 Power 5 conferences, and like at least every season you're going to exclude at least one of those conference champions, it's just I don't know. It's a tragedy, honestly.
It's dumb. That's what it is.
Like, yeah.
I never understood that. I'm like, have 8 teams, the top 5, like the 5 conference championship teams get in, and then have like maybe another conference team like
Cincinnati, or Memphis last year.
Yeah, or like all those years when like UCF was undefeated. Like put one of them in, and then the next 2 highest ranking teams after that, boom, you have an 8-team playoff, and it's only 1 extra game. Like it's not like it makes the season that much grueling longer, and or anything like that.
Just eliminate some of these other. And it's easy. You just eliminate some of these other meaningless bowl games that they play. Like it's like you got
the meaningless preseason games where you play Western, Northern, Central State.
Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis.
And say that 5 times fast. Yeah, like just easy fix right there. I don't know, but I mean, well, what do we know? We're not Skip Bayless.
We're not Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, I'm just gonna stop myself.
Jeez, I'm getting Eric fired up over here.
Okay.
Yeah, so going now to the lock board, and I don't want to rant again after all that, but man, my picks got me zero.
Go for it, dude. Go for it.
I'm not. I'll just say this: I picked the wrong Connor's team this week.
that is very true.
I picked Pittsburgh. I didn't pick UNC, and that was a mistake. That was really a big mistake because Connor probably would have taken Pittsburgh. So
goodness gracious, that was especially with the UNC one, with like that was a 62-26 game. Like I remember I didn't even like get to watch that game, and I just like looked on ESPN and I was like, whoa, like what happened here? Like I expected UNC to win, but not by this much. Like
yeah, crazy. But actually Eric was the winner of the week. Once again with that number 1 overall pick to his benefit. So Eric, go ahead and reveal what got your points for you, and your wild card did have to be used, and that did give you a point.
That worked out. Yeah, I was glad I took a safe pick with my wild card because there just weren't any other upsets that I felt comfortable with, and so with one of my college games getting canceled, I very easily got the Seahawks over the Jets, and probably one of the safest picks in lockboard history. So easy 1-pointer there. And then I was very happy with my first pick when I picked the football team over the 49ers, because I did contemplate the Giants over the Cardinals, who Nate took, and I also contemplated the Steelers over the Bills, which Zach took. I was kind of in a toss-up between those 3 games on which one I wanted to use with that number 1 overall pick. So obviously I'm glad I took that one, since that one ended up being correct. Once again, my 5-pointer didn't come through for me. I've had a lot of bad luck with those. I mean, obviously they're hard to get, but I feel like I haven't gotten a 5-pointer right in a long time. But 4 points got me first place again, and I've still got a ways to go if I'm going to catch up. I am running out of time, but I'm at least glad, even if I don't win, that I've at least managed to make it at least be a little more respectable and not like way down in the cellar like I was earlier in the season.
Yeah,
there hasn't been a goofy dragon meme of me in a while, so
yeah, you're right.
I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, there hasn't been a goofy dragon meme for anybody except for you that one time.
I was on I think I went like 3 weeks in a row without getting a pick right. Like that was bad.
It was something like that. It was like maybe not 3 weeks of 0, but like at least 3. You had like a safe pick 1 week or something.
Yeah, I think I had like 2 weeks of 0 and a week of 1 or something.
It was bad enough to make me make that dragon. So, but let's look at the total standings here. So, based off of this week now, I am still in first place, but only by 1 point. So I've got a total of 58 points. Connor's in second with 57. Eric's in third with 46, and then Nate is in fourth place with 40, 18 behind the leader. So that's where things stand now. I think we've got 3 more weeks of this to go, including this one. So things are getting to an end, and strategy will become real, especially that last week. We were talking about that earlier.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, and the possibility of a tie is still very much a real possibility.
It is. It is. So I'm in a weird spot, picking first here after that 0 point week, which I'm glad I'm first now because it seems to be pretty good to go first. So I'm gonna go ahead and take Dallas to beat San Francisco for a 3-pointer. I know it's Dallas, but San Francisco is Nick Mullins at quarterback. So
seem to be having issues with the NFC East too.
Yeah. Connor, you are now on the board.
Yeah, so I am going to head over. Well, actually, I think I might do a 180 here. I was going to head over to college football, but I think I actually want to get my NFL pick first. And I am going to take the Chicago Bears over the Minnesota Vikings.
Ooh.
I probably stole that from Nate because I know Nate likes to pick the Bears.
Yeah, that was his third pick on his list. So. Yeah, of course he would pick the Bears. So now Nate is actually picking, and since he's not here, I've got his list for him. And actually, his number 1 pick is still on the board. So Nate is going to pick Iowa State over Oklahoma.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about that one
for the big 12.
I think I was a bit disappointed when I saw the spread that wasn't a 5-pointer. Otherwise, I probably would have jumped on it from the start. But I was like,
yeah. Yeah. So that leaves Eric now with the last pick for the first round.
All right. So while my number 2, 3, and 4 picks all got picked right there, but thankfully my number 1 didn't. So at least I have that. I haven't liked the way the Raiders have been playing lately, so I'm going to take the Chargers to beat the Raiders.
Yeah. I can see that. They the Raiders actually beat them on the last play of the game when they played the first time, so that was a very close game.
Yeah. And they survived. They struggled against the Jets, so that leaves me no confidence.
Yeah. Count that as a loss, basically,
Yeah, that was basically
if it wasn't for Greg Williams, that's probably a loss.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go to college, and I'm going to make this pick, and I do have a little bit of worries of it getting possibly canceled, but I'm going to take San Jose State to beat Boise State.
Ooh, I was
there we
go.
That.
Yeah, hopefully they keep that undefeated season going on and get me those 3 points.
All right. Let's see. So now I think I'm going to go over to college, but I have to decide which one I feel more confident about. I'm definitely I'm considering looking at these 3-pointers here. But I think if and this is really tough, honestly, what I'm trying to do here. But I think I'm going to take Ole Miss to beat LSU.
Okay.
Yeah. I could see it.
Yeah, I could definitely see
I don't know what to say other than yeah, good pick. Okay, so
I was definitely between that and one other one, but I think I feel slightly better about that one.
Okay, so Nate actually gets his second pick that he wanted still on the board, and that is that. Yeah, I know, but this wasn't on my radar. But he's taking the Giants over the Browns.
Oh yeah,
this week. So
after last week, I
yeah, I in my head when I first saw that, I thought that might be a possibility. But after the way I've seen the Browns play tonight and how the Giants played yesterday, I'm like,
yeah. Yeah, that's his gonna be his pick there in the second round. Eric, it's back over to you now.
All right, so I am going to stick with the NFL. Thankfully, my number 5 pick did not get picked there, so this is one I would not have thought I would have made in the recent weeks, but after the way the Eagles handled the Saints, I'm going to take the Eagles to beat the Cardinals.
That's a good pick. I was actually considering that one. I wasn't planning on picking it yet, but I was considering that.
Yeah. Okay, it's back over to me now for the top of the third round. This is an interesting spot for me here, but I'm still gonna ride them. I'm gonna take the Lions to beat the Titans.
Oh, I thought you were gonna go against the Packers again.
Well, I've also picked the Lions the last 2 weeks, also as in addition to going against the Packers. But no, I like the Lions' chances a lot better than the Panthers' chances.
Yeah.
So
good chance I'm going to be picking the Titans in survival. So I'm kind of hoping you don't get that one.
Well, I will be rooting strong for those 5
I wouldn't
points.
I wouldn't mind if the Titans lost, as always, but that one puts me in a dilemma now, Zach. Thanks.
Dude, that's scary. I would be scared to put that as my survival pick. Just being honest with you, but hey, it's your call. So
my options are getting pretty thin at this
they are. Over to Connor now for the next pick.
Yeah, so in my head, I was thinking that I should probably take a 5-pointer, but I don't know if I feel too good about most of these 5-pointers. So especially not the ones in the NFL. Those ones I don't feel good about at all. But these ones in college, I don't really know. I feel like some of these spreads are a bit small. I'm kind of surprised that Indiana's only favored by 9.5 over Purdue. I feel like that should be quite a bit larger. Especially after how they were 13-point underdogs to Wisconsin and beat them. So, but yeah, so I'm going to go back to the NFL for a 3-point pick. And unfortunately, the Dolphins bit me in the butt last week against the Chiefs, but this time they got a better team going against them. So I'm going to take the New Orleans Saints to beat the Kansas City Chiefs.
All right. Saints beating Chiefs there for Connor. And then Nate's back on the board. Let me see where he is at so far. So Chicago is taken. That was his third. He had Dallas as his fourth, but his fifth is still on the board. He's going to take Army to beat Air Force in the military rivalry series.
Yes.
So going with Army.
You took Navy last time, and that didn't work,
I know.
well, thankfully for him, that was just a wild card pick, so it didn't actually go against him.
That is true.
That's right. Okay.
Eric,
So,
last real round pick here.
Yeah, so for my final pick besides the wild card, I'm going to take the last 3-point play in college I think could really happen, and I'm going to take I'm going to take Mississippi State to beat Missouri. Sorry.
Yeah, that was definitely
basically a pick'em game. So
yeah, that was the other one I was considering. Like between that one and Ole Miss, I was like,
yeah. I really don't trust Mississippi State though.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I don't know about this one.
Yeah. Okay, so that finishes the normal rounds, but we're gonna do that wild card round just in case of COVID. So I will lead things off with that, and I'm gonna go a 5-pointer here, because I wanted to get them picked in case I need them and they get the points. But I'm gonna go Minnesota to beat Wisconsin.
Yes, Zach and his
knew I had to take that.
His disbelief in Wisconsin this year. I mean, I kind of don't blame you after the way they've performed a bit this year.
10.5 point. I know Minnesota's not been good, but 10.5 point favorites, that screams.
I still can't believe they were 13.5 point favorites.
I know.
Indiana. Like that was probably like the easiest 5-point pick I've had all year. I was like, man, I want that one.
All right, so it's your turn now, Connor. It's wild card pick.
Yes, wild card pick. I think I am going to stick with the 3-pointers here. Well, sure, should I take a safe pick? Actually, I think I might do what Eric did last week and take a safe pick here just in case one of my college games gets canceled. And definitely the safest NFL pick of the week by far, the LA Rams over the New York Jets.
Yep. Knew what that was going to be.
Are you crazy, Connor? That's not safe at all, man.
Did you see how they got 3 points against the Seahawks? Like, man.
Nate's next pick is also going to be pretty easy to pick out. It's going to be New England to beat Miami.
Oh, wow.
So picking New England again, obviously.
I don't know about that one after the way they performed this week.
I know. But he wants the 3 points, I guess, there, maybe.
Well, hey, for his sake, it's not Tom Brady that's going to be playing in Miami this time, so...
That is true.
Yeah.
Cam Newton might do better.
Cam Newton did beat them earlier this year, so you never know.
Eric, you've got the last pick for the lockboard this week.
All right. I liked picking a safe one last time, but since I'm still pretty far behind, I don't really have that luxury of doing that. So I'm going to take a 5-pointer, and I really don't have any confidence in this happening. I hope I don't have to come down to this pick, but just in case if I do, I'm going to take Tulsa to beat Cincinnati.
You sure you don't want to take Jacksonville to beat Baltimore?
Yes.
You need that for survival.
Yeah, I'm picking the Ravens in survival, so I'm not picking the Jags.
There you go, guys. That's the lockboard for this week. Hopefully you enjoyed the commentary on that one this time. We'll see next week what craziness ensues and what person's going to be ranting about their team. So this is next week, because I know somebody will be, because we're not all it's not a full green picture on the screen every week. I'll tell you that much.
I know I think it's definitely taken a trend that I expected would happen. Like early in the season, we had weeks where we had a lot of green, but it's like when you get down to this point in the season, when like we know what teams are about, and it's like it's a lot harder to pick those upsets.
Definitely, and also too, you get the factor of some people needing to make up points, so they're getting more risky. Seeing that this week. So that's where things stand. Now we'll go around the hoop to end the show and talk about some basketball, and more specifically the Western Conference. So we'll go over some storylines, make our picks. We still have that guest who's going to join us in a bit, and we'll also go with our NBA Finals picks. So, Eric, you want to start off with the first question for me?
Yeah. So we all picked like our teams we were going to talk about, and Zach's going to be talking about the Golden State Warriors. So obviously a couple big questions for them are, one with Klay Thompson being injured and out for this whole season coming up. Are your expectations lowered for the Golden State Warriors, or do you still think that they could be a high caliber playoff team? And also, since Klay is going to be out, do you think Steph Curry is going to be able to step up and carry this team? I know we didn't get to see that last year with him getting injured. So do you think he'll be able to do it this year, or do you think he falters? So just give us your overall thoughts on the Warriors here.
Yeah, so even with Klay being out for the season, that definitely does lower their expectations a little bit. I think if he'd been healthy, it would have been expectation for a championship, just because that's how they've been the past couple seasons. Even before KD got there, they were making the finals without him. So before the Klay injury, they were absolutely had finals expectations. They do drop a little bit, but they definitely still have playoff expectations, and I still think that they can go far in the playoffs just because they have so much playoff experience, and they still have Steph Curry. And that was the second part to Eric's question is I really think he will carry the team. It's going to be the first time really he's going to be asked to carry them because they have a lot of new people, Kelly Oubre, James Wiseman, and Draymond's coming back, but he's not the player he once was a couple years ago. So
what are you talking about, man? He can go 1 through the 5.
I knew one of you guys would say that when I brought his name up.
Best defender in the NBA.
But they're still the Warriors. To me, they're still a team where if I'm an opposing team or fan of another team, and I see the Warriors come up on the schedule, as long as Steph is obviously healthy, because we know what they're like without him last year. As long as he stays healthy, I do think that they are a team to be afraid of, just because of him being like one of the best shooters in the NBA. And he's going to bring his leadership too with him. He's been to the finals. He's been in the big moments and everything. I think he's going to help the young Warriors players get better. They're a team that I think is going to start out kind of slow potentially, not having the superstars that they're used to having. But I do think that as the season gets towards the playoffs, they're going to be coming into the playoffs, sneaking in the 6, 7 to 8 seed range, and really being a scary matchup for a top team. I really think that they're gonna drag a series out. They might win, and they should still have the expectations that they could win a championship even without Klay. I think just because they still are the Warriors, and I really want to see how Steph does, because I feel like with his injury last year, kind of like Kevin Durant, he's kind of being forgotten. And now that he's back, I mean, ESPN made their rankings, and they had, I was surprised they had, I think, Dame ahead of him, which even as the biggest Dame fan, Dame's never beaten Steph head to head in the playoffs before. And they had Luka Doncic, and AD and all these players ahead of Steph in their player rankings. And I think it's just a case of we haven't seen him for a year. And I think people are going to be reminded of his greatness. And I think he's got a lot to prove this season. potentially being an MVP type of candidate if he has a great season, and really trying to, for more of a legacy thing for him, trying to enter the conversation as the greatest point guard of all time. It's something that a lot of younger fans, I feel like, will believe, but to the older fans who might put Magic as their number one point guard of all time, he definitely can do a lot this season to make a better case for him to be the greatest point guard of all time. And he's still got obviously many more years left, but this season without Clay is really going to be an interesting one when you look back on the history of his career and seeing how he did without the other Splash brother. Hopefully Clay comes back fine. I'm a big Clay fan, so I'm sad he's not going to be back. But Steph it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But I am still a believer of the Warriors, even without Clay. So we do have a guest coming in to the podcast, and we've had this guest on before. Definitely the biggest name guest we've ever had on the show, but Kawhi Leonard is joining us now to talk about his team, the LA Clippers. So Kawhi, I want to ask you about, did your team get better or worse this offseason?
Well, first of all, let me just start by saying, hey, it's your boy Kawhi Leonard. I'm in the building.
Do you still think it's a make or miss league, Kawhi?
It is a make or miss league. I'm going to make my shots. Going to play in half the games. But you think that anybody out there think Lakers are going to beat us? Y'all crazy. All right. So, yeah, thank you, Kawhi. We appreciate you being here. So, I'll take over. Kawhi Leonard had to go. He had to go rest up for the first game. You know,
I think his knee maybe was giving him issues.
Yeah, it's for sure. So, yeah. So I'm gonna, now that we've got that out of the way, I'm gonna talk about the LA Clippers here for a bit, and I definitely do think they got a little bit better. I think most people look at the loss of Montrezl Harrell, and they might think that they got worse because of that. But I actually really like the addition of Serge Ibaka to their team. He may be older than Montrezl Harrell, but I like his size better. He's a much better defender than Harrell is. And I think that's going to be a very underrated move for them. And I also like that they picked up Luke Kennard from the Pistons. He's going to give the Clippers a good presence with the 3-point shooting. That was a little bit of a problem for them last year, so I'm definitely okay with that move. The only thing they really did where I was like, man, what were they thinking? I didn't really like them extending Marcus Morris to a 4-year, $64 million contract. I know we've made fun of some moves this offseason, especially for Connor with his Charlotte Hornets, but this one hasn't gotten talked about as much as some of the other big contracts. But I don't know what the Clippers were thinking. I mean, Marcus Morris to me is like just a guy. I don't.
Well, did you see the Paul George contract?
Yeah. Well, see, I'm actually okay with the Paul George one only because the reason why I'm okay with the Paul George contract is because he was about to go into the final year of his deal. And if they want to trade him at some point in the future, then they needed to lock him down to a contract extension. And what'll be good is if, say, like this year if it does go bad for them again, and they know it's not going to work out, they can trade him, and teams would be more willing to trade for him, knowing that they still have him on the books for a few more seasons. Whereas if they were to try to trade him in the final year of his deal, teams probably wouldn't want him because they wouldn't know if he would stick around. So I'm actually okay with that because then, too, let's say if they do win the championship, then
they've got him, they have him locked down, and they have, him and Kawhi together for however long. So I'm actually, I mean, the numbers were ridiculous when I first saw it. I was laughing at it. I was like, oh my God, what a bunch of clowns. Like, what are they thinking? Like, but at the same time, when Paul George gets it going, like, he is a top caliber player in the NBA whenever he decides he wants to be. So if he can keep that, if he can actually get it going and keep it going, and maybe not choke in the playoffs, then he'd be worth the money. So, but I know we haven't gotten into our predictions just yet, but I am going to go ahead and say mine, and I do have the LA Clippers getting to the Western Conference Finals again, like I did last year, but this time I have them losing to the Lakers. I just don't see anybody beating the Lakers, but I'm just going to go ahead. It's almost like a mini like rant ahead though, because I will say LA, like, if y'all let me down in my prediction here and y'all choke again like you did in the playoffs last year, like, you're gonna have the biggest rant of the year heading your way, because Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, if both of y'all somehow were to find this and listen to this, I used to be big fans of both of y'all as players, and not even just with Paul George because he was on my Thunder for a couple seasons. Like, even back at Paul George back in your Indiana Pacer days, Kawhi Leonard back in your San Antonio Spurs days, even when you were on the Raptors and the Thunder, both of y'all, like, I respected both of y'all as athletes. I respected that you were both offensive and defensive minded players. My favorite type of player in the NBA is a person that can truly play both sides of the ball and be a true two-way player. So when I had my top 5 rankings after KD left the Thunder and went to the Warriors, both of y'all were in my top 5. Okay, but now, after what happened last year, neither of you are even close to my top 5. And you could get back there, but Kawhi, I have not respected your whole load managing and needing to get preferential treatment and not being able to stay loyal to a team with your team hopping. I've called out LeBron for that too, so it wouldn't be fair for me to not call you out too. So I didn't respect how you wanted out of San Antonio, and then I didn't respect you winning a championship with Toronto and then hopping over and forming this new team with Paul George in LA. So you fell out of my top 5 because of that. And Paul George, you fell out of my top 5 because you had to team hop with Kawhi, and you just had to buddy up just like everybody else in the NBA does. Like LeBron and AD did. You and Kawhi had to go and do the same thing. And I hate when players in the NBA do that stuff. And then not only on top of that, at least LeBron and AD went out and got it done and won the championship together. But you and Paul George were too busy. You and Kawhi were too busy having anxiety in the bubble and not being able to make a shot. And not only that,
hit the side of the backboard.
Yeah. And not only that, both of y'all were calling out Doc Rivers after y'all got him fired, saying that it was his fault why y'all didn't make it to the championship last year. I don't care what kind of scheme you come up with. I don't care what kind of plan was involved in the game plan. When you're going out there and shooting like 2 of 19, it doesn't matter what the scheme is. That's on y'all for not making your shots, okay? And y'all had several open looks in that game 7 against the Nuggets, and we're missing almost all of them.
And you were up 3-1.
Yeah, you blew a 3-1 lead, did horrific in game 7. When I predicted y'all that y'all were, before the season started, that y'all were going to win the championship, and I stuck through that even up to the NBA bubble when Zach warned me about this chemistry tension that y'all couldn't figure out, I still was like, no, I'm sticking with the Clippers. Like, they're going to win. And I wanted them to beat the Lakers so bad, but they couldn't even beat the Nuggets when they were up 3-1, who the Lakers ended up torching in the next round. So if y'all get it back together and you can redeem yourselves, good chance that my respect for you goes back up. But if you do the same crap and choke again in the playoffs this year, like, I will probably never respect either one of you two ever again. And it's a shame because, like I said, y'all both were on my list of my top 5 favorite current players in the NBA only just a couple seasons ago. And now it has completely fallen. So you got more pieces. You got a yes man coach in Ty Lue, so you'll get all the preferential treatment you want. So speaking of which, I think Ty Lue might be making an appearance as well here. I got to confirm this, but so you've got more shooters around you now. You got better defenders around you now. So if you lose this year, I don't even want to know what your excuse is. Oh yes, and it is confirmed. We do have Ty Lue here available. So Ty, what's your game plan this season? How are you going to get Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and the rest of this Clippers team on the same page? What's your strategy?
Well, obviously, I'm gonna. It's well known that when I was the coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, that LeBron James was clearly our best player, and I kind of just let him do whatever he wanted to do, and I let him run the show and call the plays. And I kind of stood there and looked like I was the coach, and I did the press conferences and everything. But we really knew that LeBron was the coach of the team. Now they're paying me a lot of money, so I'm gonna kind of really just do the same thing. I'm gonna like look like I'm making the plays in the huddle, but really I'm gonna be like, "Hey Kawhi, what do you want to do?" Or Paul George, if you're not feeling too anxious right now, do you have any particular play that you would like to run? So, so that's basically going to be my strategy. And then, if it's like a Kawhi load management day, and if Paul George is feeling a little too anxious to go out there, then I'll probably I guess then I'll have to come up with something. But, I'm just going to wait until that happens, and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do. So and also maybe I can somehow trade for LeBron. If I can get him in here too, then that would just be the perfect masterpiece. So there you go. Well, thank you, Ty. I appreciate your honesty there. So there's your 2020 2021 season prediction and analysis for the Los Angeles Clippers.
Dang, dude, I did not expect all of that. We don't have our cameras on, but man, if we did, I would have expected to see fire coming out of your ears or smoke or something, man.
Dude, the Clippers were just so triggering for me last year. Like the way they let me down, and plus not only just that I predicted them. I mean, once it was known that LeBron and AD were going to team, that they were teaming up together. I wanted them to lose so bad, and the Clippers were supposed to be the best chance at that happening, and then they didn't
not
even
according to Rockets fans.
Well, yeah, but they didn't even get to match up against them in the playoffs because they choked, and it just was so frustrating. And it finally, my attention and buildup of the Clippers has come out. But like I said, I'm still predicting them to make it to the Western Conference Finals. So that I'm giving them another chance, but this is it.
Yeah, really. Okay, let's go now and talk about the Phoenix Suns. That's the third storyline we have for the West. So Connor's going to talk about the Suns and just in general, what are your expectations for the team? Because there's a lot of hype now with Chris Paul. Are you buying the hype, or do you think that it's fool's gold?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I'm kind of like in the middle. Like, I'm really not buying the hype at this point. Like, I know there's a lot of people saying like, oh, they're gonna make the playoffs and they're gonna, like give the Clippers a run for their money, and maybe they might be there at the end with the Lakers. And so I'm here to say that that's not going to happen. Because the thing about Chris Paul is that I think I'm really interested to see how he fits in Phoenix, because when he got traded to OKC, like he was going to be the guy. Like, even though he was, he's, how old is he now? Like 37 or something? Like, he's old. So
yeah, I think he's 35 or 36.
Is he? Okay,
He's the highest paid 36-year-old who's now the CEO
yeah,
of
yeah.
a
I think,
major company.
yeah, really. Yeah, so I think he's 36, but so he's like, thing for me is that when he was in OKC, he was the guy. Like, Gallo, Shea, Steven Adams, like, none of them were, the guys in OKC. Like, it was Paul George and Russell Westbrook, and then they were both gone. So Chris Paul was going to be the new guy. Whereas you're coming into the Suns that they already have their guy, their number one guy in Devin Booker. He's the big time scorer. He's the future of this team. Blah, blah, blah. DeAndre Ayton is also supposed to be part of this, bright future for the Phoenix Suns. So Chris Paul is going to be coming in as like someone who he's not going to be able to take over the game and, implement his style of play as much as I think he would like to. And I think it's going to hurt him, especially at this old age. I don't think he's going to mesh really well with the Suns. And obviously the Thunder having the success they had last year came as a shock to all of us. I mean, none of us even considered that the Thunder were going to make the playoffs last year. So that was big time last year by the Thunder. But this year, listen, I don't think Chris Paul is going to be the difference maker. Jay Crowder is probably one of, like, in my opinion, one of the worst choices for a starting power forward in the entire league. Like, I don't know how. I mean, he literally just stands out on the perimeter all the time. I mean, he's like the next evolution of PJ Tucker, except he's not standing in the corner every time. So I don't like Jay Crowder being, the signing of him to be the power forward, and it's just another fact that the West is just, there's too many good teams in the West. I mean, I know this is like a talking point every season, but I mean, there's just too many good teams in the West. You've got the Trailblazers, the Nuggets, the Mavericks, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Pelicans are supposed to be good. The Jazz, who knows? Maybe if the Rockets can put something back together, then even though they don't have Russ anymore, but the Rockets could obviously still be in there because they've got Harden. So it's like I just don't see any room for them to like be a surefire, like, yes, this team is for sure going to make the playoffs. I think they'll be in it for sure. Like, I think they're going to be probably like the 9 or the 10, or maybe they just squeak in, which the biggest reason why I've got them at that point anyway is mainly because of the Warriors. I know Zach gave his cases to say that he thinks the Warriors are still going to be fine. I don't think the Warriors are going to be fine without Clay. I know that I'm pretty sure Eric's talked about this before on the podcast, but like, talking about how I don't know if he, obviously still has the same opinion, but I do, is that I don't think that Steph Curry can carry this team. He's never proven that he can carry a team, carry this team and go forward. Like when they got to kind of to the reason why he's never won a Finals MVP, like, it was even before Kevin Durant got there, because after Kevin Durant got there, Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant, and he's going to take over a game. And obviously Steph's really good too, but Kevin Durant has the more all-around game that he's going to, put up for you. But even before Kevin Durant got there, like they lost the finals to the Cavaliers, and then the second time, and then the first time it was Andre Iguodala who came out with the Finals MVP instead of Steph. So I just don't see that he's going to be able to carry this team, just because, I mean, I think it's really easy for teams to key on him. Like, he's not a very good defender at all. So, opposing point guards are going to be able to score on him pretty easily. And I mean, really, he's a one-man show at this point, because Draymond's not the same as he used to be. And it's going to take time for these other young players to develop. And I think it's going to be way too easy for them to contain him. That's not to say that he's going to have a bad year. I just don't think he's going to be able to carry this team. So I think the Warriors are out of it. And that is pretty much the only reason why Phoenix, in my opinion, is elevated to maybe possibly being in a playoff spot. I just don't buy the hype around this team very much. And the only reason why I think they're going to possibly be in it is because I don't think the Warriors are going to be there, and maybe the Rockets are going to, falter as well. So it's not good for them, in my opinion.
Yeah. So now we'll get over and take a look at our Western Conference Finals predictions. We'll skip Eric since he basically did his already. And I'll start.
That's fine.
Yeah. We'll start with mine. I'm taking the Lakers to win the West, and I think they will beat the Trailblazers in the conference finals. It was pretty easy to pick the Lakers to win the West when I think they got better after this offseason with bringing in Montrez. And I did agree with Eric about the Clippers getting better because of fit. I think Serge is a better fit than Montrez Harrell was. And Kennard's a better addition than Landry Shamet was. So the Clippers, I think, did get better, but the Lakers, I think, got even more better. So I have the Lakers winning the West, but the Trailblazers I put in as the runner up just because I really think that this is Dame's best supporting cast that he's ever had. He's got a full bench. Um, they're going to be a deeper team than they have been, and hopefully they'll all be healthy. Zach Collins is going to miss the first month, but other than that, Rodney Hood is back. They brought back Enes Kanter, who actually played really well in Terry Stott's system. Melo he's still looking okay. Gary Trent kind of had his coming out party in the bubble, and they still even have Nasir Little, who gets forgotten on this team. But they've got him, Derek Jones Jr., Robert Covington that they brought in the offseason, Harry Giles, another backup center. So they got a lot better, in my opinion, this offseason. And when you look at the other teams around the West that can contend, really the biggest scare to me, I'm not as scared of the Clippers just because I don't think they're going to get it together because they showed me last year, I think, what they are really made of. And so I'm not worried about the Clippers, but the Nuggets would have been the other team that I'm most afraid of. But they actually got worse, I think, after free agency. They lost a lot of pieces that are harder to replace. So that's why I have the Blazers as the 2 spot, just because I think the Nuggets would be the 3, but they got worse and Portland definitely got better. And Dame's going to have a real good year too, I predict. He's actually he's making half court shots and is going to add that into his game. So I'm excited to see how that turns out. It's crazy. It's crazy. He actually does make those shots at a good percentage. So yeah, that's my finals prediction, or Western Conference Finals prediction. And then Eric has the Lakers over Clippers with his prediction. And then Connor, let's hear about yours.
Yeah, so like the other 3 guys, I've got the Lakers. Pretty sure nobody in their right mind this season is not picking the Lakers to be in the Western Conference Finals. I've also got them winning it. But I actually have the Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals. Like Zach, I don't believe in the Clippers at all. I think they're I think they're just gonna falter again. Like, they'll make the playoffs, but I think Kawhi and playoff P are gonna fall apart again. So, like Eric said, maybe playoff P is too anxious, but and I think for the Blazers, for me, I think it's that they were the other team, like kind of like Zach. I was considering the Blazers and the Nuggets here as well. The Nuggets, I feel like they got really fortunate last year. The fact that they were able to come back from those 3-1 deficits when they really should have been eliminated in the first round. So definitely very fortunate circumstances there. And then for Portland, I just don't know about Portland. I feel like, I don't know, from what I've seen from Portland, at least when I looked at them in the playoffs last year, like, Dame was obviously huge in the bubble, like, during the regular season portion of the bubble, and he had a great game 1, but it felt like to me they just kind of fell apart after that. Like, obviously the Lakers are a good team, but Dame wasn't making as much of the shots as he should have. CJ kind of disappeared completely in that playoff run, which he really needs CJ to be up in there if they want to make any sort of run. So I don't know. I just feel like, I feel like they are gonna fall apart in the playoffs again, and I think they're gonna fall just short. Maybe they'll get beat like right before the Western Conference Finals. Like, I don't think they're gonna lose in the first round again, but I think they'll lose in the second round. But then for the Mavericks, I mean, they're pretty much bringing back the exact same team. Luka Doncic is like, we all talked about. Eric and Zach have him as the MVP. Nate and I said he was pretty much our runner-up for MVP. So Doncic is obviously going to be big for them. If Porzingis can stay healthy, he's going to be big for them. And I think I really like one of the biggest things they did this offseason, bringing in Jay Rich from Philadelphia. I think that was a fantastic move for them to bring in a player, like a more defensive-minded player, Another shooter to this team. He's kind of like he's a better version of Danny Green. Really, he's like a 3-and-D kind of player. So I think Jay Rich is really going to be the piece for them that's going to put it together. Because I think what a lot of people forget about with the Mavericks last season was that, yeah, they were the 7 seed, but they were like one of the best 7 seeds. Because when you look in the West, like all those teams pretty much between like the 3 and the 7 were really close together. There was only a few games separating them. And so I think, and the Mavericks also gave the Clippers a run for their money in that first series against them. So I'm definitely looking for big things out of the Mavericks, and I think they're going to make it to the Western Conference Finals. But unfortunately, I don't think they're going to beat the Lakers. I think the Lakers are still just too good, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, so that brings us now to our NBA Finals predictions. So between the three of us, we actually all have the same matchup, just some differences in who wins it. And then Nate, who's not here, has an old-fashioned Lakers Celtics Finals, and he's got the Lakers winning that. So we'll look now at between the Nets and the Lakers. If you missed last episode, we all had the Nets winning the East. So the way things go, I have the Nets winning the finals, and Eric and Connor have the Lakers winning the finals. And I'll just talk briefly why I've got the Nets winning. Really, I think the star powers will equal out with Kyrie and KD versus LeBron and AD. I think they're both those duos are going to get their points and everything, but when they're either not on the floor or in foul trouble or just the other teammates of theirs, that's where I give the big advantage to the Nets. Jared Allen, Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, like Eric was talking about last episode. These are the guys, even DeAndre Jordan to some extent. These are the surrounding cast for the Nets. And I think it would be better for them to actually keep those guys on their team instead of trading them for James Harden. I think it would be better for them to keep the depth that they have than add another superstar who's going to demand the ball and play ISO ball. So I think the Nets will keep the team the way it is, and I think just the rest of the pieces are going to be better than the Lakers because really the Lakers after LeBron and AD are bad. They're not a deep team. I know they brought in Montrezl Harrell, but they did lose Rondo. They gained some pieces, but they're not a great team, and they've shown that they can't even make the playoffs without LeBron. And they couldn't make the playoffs without AD even also. So whereas the Nets last year had kind of an impressive run in the bubble without their star players, I just feel like the Nets are gonna outscore the Lakers and win. It'll be a close series though, and then when you look at the head-to-head between KD and LeBron, I do give the slight edge to KD just because of how it's gone between those two in the past couple of times they met in the finals. KD's got the advantage on him, so that's where I have things. I've got the Nets winning, but Eric and Connor have the Lakers winning against the Nets. So I guess just explain why. Eric, you can start first with why you've got the Lakers.
Okay, yeah. So I've got the Lakers winning. First of all, I actually I guess one thing that just concerns me about the Nets is going to be the injury history. Like, obviously, KD's coming off of the torn Achilles. It seems like Kyrie gets hurt every year these last few years. That's, I guess, one of my biggest question marks for the Nets. I'm definitely hopeful that the Nets do win. I would rather them win over the Lakers, but I do have to disagree, though, on Zach's comments about, aside from LeBron and AD, that the Lakers aren't good. I mean, Montrezl Harrell is a nice addition for them. Dennis Schroeder is a nice addition for them. I will say, I do think the Lakers are a little bit more vulnerable defensively this year, but I do think that they still got better as a team, especially scoring wise. And I think that that's going to be able to carry them to the finals. And also, I just yesterday on Twitter, I saw where somebody shared this thing where like Kyrie and KD did some sort of, I don't know if it was on Instagram or what it was on, but they did some live thing together. And Kyrie was talking about how he was Kevin Durant in a past life. And I was like,
oh, he's really weird. I already know
bro,
that.
I'm like, bro, this guy, I mean, I knew he was weird, but I didn't. I mean, because
he was a flat earther at one point.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Like, yeah, he thought that too, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, this dude's weird.
He
and
said he's not going to talk.
He's
actually getting fined because he's not going to talk to the media this year.
Marshawn Lynch 2.0.
Yeah, and then,
but those fines are going to add up. He called the media pawns.
They were discussing that on their offense that they were going to do something 2.5 times a game. I'm like, I don't really know how you can do something a half a time a game, but I don't know, man. It's just like, it was weird. I don't know, man. I mean, they are best friends apparently, but
yeah,
I just don't know if I feel like if Kyrie messes around too much, it could frustrate Kevin Durant a little bit. So. Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm giving the edge to the Lakers, but if it's the Nets and Lakers in the finals and the Nets win, I'm not going to be mad about it. Connor, do you have anything different to add for the Lakers case?
Yeah, I guess the only things I really have to add for the Lakers is, one, I think their biggest advantage over the Nets obviously is a way more playoff experience on this roster when it comes to people. I mean, obviously Kevin Durant's got lots of playoff experience. I feel like Kyrie's only real playoff experience was him being carried by LeBron, so I don't really equate much of his experience. But obviously, this team just came off winning the championship, so they all have playoff experience. And I think when it comes to the defensive side of things, I do think that they made some moves to really get better there. Obviously, Montrezl Harrell's a great defender, but I think bringing in Wesley Matthews was a really good move for them. He did a really good job guarding Jimmy Butler in that series against the Heat, between the Bucks and the Heat. So I think he's definitely going to be a nice addition off the bench. And then really, I think they just have, like I said, I think they have a better roster than the Nets do overall. Kind of like I'm agreeing with Eric on that. I think, bringing in Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell, Wesley Matthews, bringing in Marc Gasol, I think was, he's not fantastic, obviously, but I think he is an okay piece to put in there, giving you two very physical centers. So, especially at this point in his career, Marc Gasol is not really, he's not going to be in there as, I think Montrezl Harrell is going to be in there longer. So you're going to have, which I think is better for them. So, I just think the Lakers, with the combination of their experience and their whole team in general, it's just, I think, better than the Nets. And I'm also on the same page as Eric, though. If it comes down to Nets and Lakers, I will be rooting for the Nets. So,
yeah, definitely. So that's gonna wrap up this episode. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed listening to that. Talking no NFL this week, but we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk about the NFL. Actually, we got a break from the NFL because next week, as mentioned earlier, Eric is going to be hosting, I think, the 6th edition of Sports Jeopardy.
It's either 6 or 7.
Yeah, so
I think it's the 7th.
Okay. Sports Jeopardy, the 7th, hosted by Eric. Tune in.
Yes.
Tuesday at 5. All right. Okay. All right. I'll stop being weird and we'll wrap this thing up. So
okay, Kyrie Irving.
Say as if I wasn't weird the whole episode.
Thank you to everybody for listening and watching, and we'll be back next week. Until then, be clutch.
Bye.
Peace.